Oh God, you still reek of engine oil. Evelyn Reed's words fell like shards of ice. She pointed straight at the Phoenix engine, spitting sparks in the middle of the boardroom. The overhead lights caught on the diamond ring wrapped around, her finger flashing with every movement. She lifted her hand to cover her nose in a theatrical gesture, as if the smell of sweat and grease was unbearable. A janitor thinks he can fix this? Andre Washington stood at the doorway, gripping a black trash bag soaked with oil. Sweat rolled down his forehead, mixing with dust and the smell of machine grease clinging to his clothes. 20 executives sat in a row before the glass table, all turning their heads at once, staring at him like a stray dog crashing a dinner party. Evelyn advanced, her crimson heels pounding the marble floor like a judge's gavel. The charcoal gray suit clung to her frame, each fold stiff like armor. Chanel perfume pressed down on the room, mingling with the contempt in her eyes. She stopped just a few steps away from Andre, lips curled in a mocking smile. "Here's the deal," Evelyn announced, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Fix this $2 million engine, the very thing the MIT team couldn't even touch. If you succeed, I'll marry you right here, in front of everyone." A roar of laughter burst from the executive row. Evelyn snapped her fingers in Andre's face, diamonds blazing. "But when you fail, and you will fail, security will escort you out of this company. Permanently." In the corner, 2 bulky guards clenched their fists, waiting for the signal. A young engineer folded his arms, smirking. Andre didn't answer. His eyes locked on the engine, coughing smoke. Phoenix was no ordinary machine. It was the prototype of Phoenix 1, the first autonomous ambulance project of Origin Dynamics. If it worked, emergency response times could be cut in half, saving thousands of lives across the nation. But today, it was nothing more than a searing block of metal, diagnostic screens flaring red, spewing out the same warning. The error repeated. Every time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds in, the engine died, the console flashing harmonic disturbance detected. Nobody understood what it meant. Not MIT. Not Stanford. Not Origin's own team. From the front row, Dr. Eris Thorne of the Department of Transportation flipped open his notebook, his pen moving steadily, his face unreadable. Across the table, 2 German investors whispered in their native tongue, eyes glinting cold as steel. The company's entire future dangled in the suffocating air. Evelyn raised her hand, and the big screen lit up, displaying a jagged thermal graph plunging downwards. "See?" she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "One minor fault, and $50 million in contracts go up in smoke. That's why we don't gamble on amateurs." Her gaze drilled into Andre. "And today, we'll all witness a farce." Andre stayed silent. He wasn't looking at Evelyn. He was listening to Phoenix. The engine hissed, coughing like a patient struggling to breathe on a hospital bed. He tightened his grip on the trash bag until his knuckles turned white. The room went still. An executive whispered, "Why is he still standing there?" Another chuckled, "Just wait, he'll break." Andre exhaled. He bent down, setting the trash bag aside. The heavy thud echoed, slicing through the silence. Every eye locked onto him. One executive grimaced. An MIT engineer smirked in disdain. Andre walked straight to the engine. He lifted his hand and pressed it against the burning surface of the metal. The heat made him flinch, but he kept it there, as though he were listening for its pulse. Evelyn scoffed, folding her arms, standing like a queen watching a tragic play. A live stream camera zoomed in, searching Andre's face for fear. He lifted his head and, for the first time, looked straight at Evelyn. No words, just a single, resolute nod. The room froze. An executive swallowed hard. A young engineer shook his head and chuckled. One of the guards muttered, "He's lost. It." Dr. Thorne stopped writing. His eyes rose to Andre, glimmering with sudden curiosity. Evelyn smirked and turned toward the camera. "Fine. Let's see how a janitor plays engineer." Andre didn't react. His fist tightened, veins rising, against his skin. His gaze never left Phoenix. No one in that room knew the game had already changed. The air inside Origen's boardroom froze after Andre's nod. But in his mind, the present sounds dissolved, replaced by a familiar rhythm. He was back in Detroit, where the smell of gasoline seeped into every thread of fabric, where each hammer strike rang out like the heartbeat of the city itself. The door of the old garage creaked open, the little bell above it chiming. Samuel "Pops" Washington was bent under the hood of a '68 Ford, his calloused hands slick with oil. He glanced up at young Andre standing hesitantly in the doorway clutching a lunchbox. "Come here, son," Pops beckoned. His voice, roughened by cigarettes and coffee, carried a warmth that wrapped around Andre. He set the lunchbox down and hurried over. Pops took his small hand and placed it on the sputtering engine. "Feel it," he said. Andre frowned. "All I hear is noise." Pops laughed, his booming chuckle echoing through the garage. "Not noise, a heartbeat. An engine doesn't care if you went to MIT. It only cares if you can hear it." He tapped the block lightly, tilting his head. "Hear that? Cylinder 3 is off beat." Andre focused, listening hard. The engine's growl vibrated through his hand, and then, faintly, he caught it. A stumble, like a runner tripping mid-stride. He nodded slowly. Pops smiled, pride burning in his eyes. The years that followed, Andre spent his childhood in that cathedral of grease and steel. Pops told him stories of being one of the first black foremen at Ford, of having to work twice as hard for half the recognition. He showed Andre the details, listening to valves, smelling burnt oil, and reading the color of exhaust. Once, 3 college-trained engineers came to inspect a vintage Cadillac. They declared the engine dead, beyond saving. Pops only chuckled, leaned in, and listened. He found a crack no wider than a hairline. A quick weld, and the car roared back to life. Andre had stood there, eyes wide with awe. "Remember this," Pops said, wiping his hands on a rag. "The world may laugh at your skin color, but machines don't lie. Fix what they can't, and suddenly color doesn't matter." Years passed. Those words carved themselves into Andre's heart. Pops was gone. The garage shuttered. Andre earned a technical degree, but the diploma hung in his one-bedroom apartment, gathering dust. Reality wasn't like the textbooks. Nobody hired a young black technician without connections. So Andre worked maintenance at Origen, mopping floors, hauling trash, scrubbing oil stains. The skills Pops gave him survived only as memory until today. Every night after his shift, Andre sat beside his mother's bed. Denise Washington wasn't dying of cancer as the neighbors thought. She suffered from a rare neurodegenerative disorder that left her hands trembling, her memory fragmenting. Andre held a straw to her lips, guiding each sip. Her fading eyes still lit when he whispered, "Mom, I'll find a way, I promise." The treatment costs were crushing, and insurance was useless. An experimental therapy in Boston was her only hope, but the price towered above his meager maintenance pay. Every dollar he earned went into her care fund. Every overtime, hour, every side job, each one to keep his promise. At Origen, Andre was invisible. He overheard forgotten emails on open screens. The janitor, that's what they called him. Once, while clearing trash in a conference room, 2 executives joked about firing him to cut costs. Andre said nothing, only bowed his head and picked up the last scrap of paper. But inside, each word landed like a blade. That night, he returned home, switched on a battered Bluetooth speaker, and sat by his mother. He played the old recordings Pops had made of engines. The revs, the stumbles, all resounded through the room. His mother smiled faintly. "Sounds like your father," she whispered. Andre nodded. He knew if Pops were still alive, he would say, "Son, the Phoenix engine is just another heart. Listen to it." Now, standing before Evelyn Reed, before Dr. Thorne, before rows of MIT and Stanford engineers, Andre didn't see a trap. He saw an opportunity. Phoenix was a patient in cardiac arrest, and he was the last man willing to put his hand on his chest. The trash bag lay abandoned. His calloused hands were ready for the greatest test of his life. And in his ears, the echoes of Detroit whispered still, "Listen for the heartbeat, son." Origen's boardroom blazed with light like a theater. In truth, it had become a stage. Floor-to-ceiling glass reflected the cold gleam of LED panels. Chairs, curved in rows, every pair of eyes fixed on the Phoenix engine burning in the center. Heat radiated from it, mixed with the acrid scent of melted plastic and scorched metal. Andre walked slowly inside, no trash bag in his hands now. The crowd followed him with their gaze, and you could imagine the atmosphere as if a fighter were stepping into the ring. Except this fighter wore a worn work uniform, oil-stained shoes, and a face streaked with sweat. In the front row, Dr. Aris Thorne sat upright, notebook open on his lap. His face was expressionless, but his pen tapped against the page, each beat like a clock counting down. Across from him, two German investors folded their arms, eyes narrowing with suspicion. They had poured in millions, waiting either for a miracle or for a catastrophe. Evelyn Reed stood like a performer basking in her private show. Her golden hair shimmered under the lights, her smile a cold half-curve. She stared into the live stream, camera broadcasting onto the massive screen, and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness a performance worth remembering." Laughter trickled from the executive row. The MIT and Stanford engineers huddled together, whispering. One quipped, dripping sarcasm, "Who does he think he is? Tony Stark?" The group erupted in laughter. Bitter, yes, but also ordinary. In engineering circles, too much confidence could be a sin. Here, Andre had no right to even possess it. Andre didn't answer anyone. He went straight to the Phoenix engine and raised his hand. "Turn everything off. I need silence." The room erupted in murmurs. One executive frowned, muttering, "He thinks this is his garage?" Evelyn smirked. "Fine. Give him what he wants." Orders rippled down. The diagnostic screens blinked black, computers fell silent, and the cooling fans stopped spinning. A suffocating silence blanketed the room. From his tool pouch, Andre pulled something that made everyone blink. Not a scanner, not a sleek modern sensor. An old mechanic's stethoscope, cracked leather, dented earpieces. He pressed it against the engine, bowed his head, and listened. Imagine that scene. In a room brimming with cutting-edge technology, a janitor hunched over the engine like a doctor with a patient, listening through a relic of another age. People chuckled. Cameras zoomed close, and Evelyn tilted her head, delighted. "He's going to fix a $2 million engine with a piece of junk?" she mocked. Andre didn't reply. He listened. He shifted the stethoscope from cylinder to cylinder. The engine roared to life, its growl shaking the room. To most ears, it was only noise, vibration. But Andre was different. His brow furrowed, his fingers tapped to the rhythm of the revolutions, his eyelids lowered in concentration. 1 minute. 2. Then he lifted his head and pointed toward the faint glow of the oscilloscope. "You've been hunting for a fault in the code. But this isn't software. It's like an orchestra with instruments out of tune. The conductor isn't wrong. The musicians themselves are offbeat." The room froze. A MIT engineer snapped back instantly. "Nonsense. The system's fully optimized." Andre cut him off, his voice steady and precise. "At 2800 RPM, there's a skipped beat, a missing pulse. The metal strains, biting into itself. That's why it overheats." Dr. Thorne's eyes lit up. His pen slashed across the page, writing furiously, as if carving lines into the paper. The German investors exchanged looks, their frost thawing for the first time. A few executives stopped laughing. Evelyn stood stiff, her smile faltering. What made that moment remarkable was Andre's translation of machine language into human words. He didn't bury them in jargon. He spoke like a storyteller in a Detroit cafe, explaining that engines, too, have hearts and rhythms. This wasn't just skill. It was an inheritance. Pops had taught him this. And now, in the glass arena, the old lessons returned, forcing every skeptic into silence. The room tightened like a drawn string. People sat up straight, eyes locked on Andre. Evelyn dug her nails into the table, the glass of water before her trembling. The live stream kept rolling, hundreds watching outside, and at the center stood one ordinary man, listening to the heartbeat of steel. Andre stood there, mechanic's stethoscope pressed against the roaring engine. The MIT engineers shook their heads, one muttering, "He's faking it." Evelyn folded, her arms a half-smile on her lips, eyes fixed on the live-stream camera. But Dr. Thorne bent lower, his pen racing faster, fingers drumming a sharp rhythm as if counting down. Andre set the stethoscope aside and wiped the sweat from his brow. "The problem isn't software, it's philosophy." He pointed at the gleaming black steel. This engine was handcrafted in Germany. Its designer calculated tolerances to expand and contract with heat, a breathing space. But your AI software doesn't allow breathing space. It demands perfection, every micron. Exact. The result? This heart is being strangled. A young engineer shot back, "You don't have the credentials to talk about design philosophy." Andre shook his head. "I don't need credentials to hear metal cry for help." He opened an old toolbox. Inside wasn't a laptop, nor new chips, only a handful of tarnished steel tuning forks, each etched with a number. He lifted one, tapped it lightly on the table, and its hum rippled through the room. Laughter erupted from the executive row. Evelyn locked eyes with the camera, sharpening her words. "See? $2 million, and he wants to fix it with toy instruments." Andre didn't turn. He set the tuning fork against the engine, tilted his ear, then moved it again, adjusting bolts, loosening here, tightening there. Each shift, he tapped. Another fork, listening to the resonance. Sweat dripped from his chin, soaking into the faded fabric of his work shirt. One engineer whispered, "What the hell is he doing?" Dr. Thorne lifted his gaze, his eyes alight. He murmured, almost to himself, "He's searching for the resonant frequency. In physics, every metal carries its own frequency. Strike the right note, and it sings." Pops had once built these forks to listen to the heart of engines. Now Andre wielded them like a conductor tuning an orchestra gone astray. He shifted from fork to fork. The room fell into breathless silence. Only the metallic hum blended with the engine's growl. At first chaos, then gradually harmony. Like tuning a guitar. When the string aligns, the whole space seems to tense, then release. Andre tightened one last bolt. He struck the fork etched, with 2,800 RPM. The engine responded, humming, trembling, then settling steady. He set the fork down, exhaled deeply. "It's done." Dr. Thorne shot up. "Restart it." The operator pressed the switch. Phoenix shuddered, then roared to life. But this time the sound was different. No rattles, no choking. Only a solid resonant thunder, rich and full like a solemn symphony. The diagnostic screens flipped from red to green in unison. Temperature stabilized. Efficiency soared to 98.2%. The MIT engineers froze, eyes wide. An executive dropped his tie, jaw hanging. The German investors leaned forward, scribbling notes for the first time. Evelyn's face tightened, her smile gone. Beyond the glass, Phoenix One's headlights flickered on. Its electric horn blared, and the vehicle glided out of its bay, smooth as silk. The room shot to its feet. One executive shouted, "It's running!" Another fumbled his phone, calling PR immediately. The timer on the big screen ticked on. 15 minutes. 20. 30. Phoenix did not falter. Each passing minute transformed the suffocating silence into sheer astonishment. People turned to each other, whispering, "Unbelievable." Andre stood still, his hand resting on the engine like a doctor listening to the chest of a patient reborn. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to gloat. Only a quiet smile curved his lips, and, "I'll tell you the truth. If you've ever heard a chaotic orchestra suddenly fall into perfect unison, you understand. It is the moment when prejudice dies, and only truth remains." And the truth here was simple. a janitor had just achieved what the brightest engineers could not. In the room, Dr. Thorne closed his notebook and rose. His eyes glistened, his voice firm. The Phoenix engine has found its heartbeat. And in that instant, the hall exploded in thunderous applause. Some MIT engineers dropped their heads, hiding their shame. The German investors spoke in English for the first time. "This is the future." Evelyn stepped back, her face drained of color. She knew the power game she had built was collapsing before her eyes, before thousands watching live. Andre didn't look at her. He simply placed his hand on Phoenix once more, as though resting it on the shoulder of an old friend. The timer on the big screen ticked past 40 minutes. Phoenix still roared steadily and strongly, no overheating, no shutdown. The entire room was drowned in an unbelievable silence. Everyone knew in that instant the game was over. Dr. Aris Thorne was the first to rise. He closed his notebook, clipped the pen into the spine, and looked directly at the crowd. His voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "The Phoenix Project is fully approved." The tapping of his pen ceased. Then he added, each word heavy as a hammer, "I will write in my report that this success came from a man the company has systematically dismissed. This is not just a technical victory. This is a failure of leadership at the highest level." The room froze. Executives who had laughed minutes earlier could no longer meet each other's eyes. Cameras still streamed live, thousands watching, and all of them heard that verdict. Klaus Miller, the elder German investor, sprang to his feet. He did not look at Evelyn Reed. His gaze locked on Andre Washington. "The investment deal is approved, with one condition only. Mr. Washington will lead the integration team. This offer is non-negotiable." The room erupted. A young executive nearly toppled from his chair. Evelyn's face went pale, her lips trembling. The MIT engineers stood stiff until one of them, cheeks flushed red, stepped forward to Andre. He extended his hand, voice breaking. We were wrong. It's an honor to work under your direction." Andre took his hand in a firm, steady grip, without malice. Every eye turned to Evelyn. She stood frozen, phone in hand, live stream capturing her collapse. The red soles of her Louboutins tapped involuntarily, no longer the rhythm of power, but of dread. Andre walked toward her. The room held its breath. People expected him to demand an apology, or to repeat the humiliating marriage challenge she had thrown at him. But he did neither. He stopped in front of her, met her eyes, and spoke slowly. "I heard this project was to honor your brother. This engine only wants to save lives, just like you. Sometimes all of us just need to learn how to listen to the heartbeat." There was no triumph in his voice, only truth, plain and gentle, yet it made the entire room shiver. Evelyn froze, her face cracking, speechless. Andre turned away. He needed nothing more. He left her standing there under thousands of eyes and dozens of cameras, to face the judgment of the public alone. Engineers and investors surged toward him, thrusting papers, blueprints, and questions. "Mr. Washington, your input on recalibrating. The sensors? We need your approval for the new integration schematics." Andre accepted the designs, his calloused hands trembling slightly. An hour ago, those hands carried a trash bag. Now they carried the future of Origen Dynamics. Cameras zoomed in. Andre looked down at the drawings, then lifted his head, a faint smile playing at his lips. Not smugness, just the quiet smile of a man who had kept his promise to his past, to his grandfather, to his mother. The lights poured down on his face, no longer the shadow of an invisible employee. Andre Washington had stepped into the light. From an expert's view, this was a textbook case of power shifting in an organization. When the dismissed prove undeniable value, the balance tilts their way. But if you heard it as a story told over coffee, it was simpler. It was the moment a janitor became a hero before the very people who once sought to humiliate him. And the truth is, what held the audience in breathless silence wasn't just that. Phoenix ran. It was that Andre needed no shouting, no revenge. He won with dignity, by listening to the heartbeat of steel, something the men in million-dollar suits had never understood. Some victories thunder with applause, with contracts, with millions on the line, but the greatest victories are quiet, simple, when someone once overlooked dares to rise, proving that dignity cannot be erased. Andre Washington needed no vengeance. He only needed to listen to the heartbeat of steel, reminding the world that true worth comes from hands and heart, not from titles or suits. And in that moment, all of us must ask ourselves, how many times have we overlooked an Andre because of prejudice? How many chances to save lives, to change lives, have been buried by arrogance? If you too believe that integrity is worth more than power, that persistence and kindness can transform entire systems, leave a comment. Share this story so others will know that even in the coldest rooms, the human heart can still work miracles. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the stories that touch your heart.